Today's guest is Benjamin Major. Based out of Salt Lake City, Benjamin's an artist and producer who's made a name for himself amongst his local scene. Welcome, Benjamin.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
hmm
Let's start back to the beginning. Where were you born and raised, and how did music first come into your life?
So I was actually born in Germany. My parents are Bosnian refugees, so they had me in Germany from the Bosnian War. So they weren't in Bosnia, and we moved here when I was like a year old. So I was raised in Salt Lake City, and music was just kind of around my life, like from as long as I can remember. My parents are fans of music. They listened to everything from like AC/DC to Michael Jackson, Run DMC and stuff. And then I had influence from my sister growing up who was, really into hip hop and stuff like that. So I think before I ever even created music, I was just a huge fan of music in general. So yeah.
That's awesome. I'm kind of curious, did your parents have any like Bosnian music influences they're aware of, or was it always like the American music for them?
No, they listen to Bosnian music a lot, but like over there, like overseas, they, whatever was like popular here at the time was, huge over there as well. So yeah, I mean, they listen to a mix of both, like Bosnian music and just like American music, stuff like that, just whatever. But yeah, my dad was like, he liked a lot of like rock and roll and metal at the time, and just like pretty much everything. So I got a lot of influence, listening to. He'd always put tapes in his tape deck. He drove this '96 Camaro when I was growing up, and he would always throw in like Thriller by Michael Jackson. He had it on cassette tape, and like I loved the hell out of that album, and just a bunch of different stuff. So yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Mm.
So, how did you get into making your own music? Like, did you play any instruments? Did you just do your voice? How did you start?
No, I didn't. I didn't never played any instruments growing up, really. But it was just mostly I was really like I loved writing, and writing lyrics and stuff like that is kind of just where I started. And then yeah, since then I've just been really getting into like producing stuff, self like teaching myself instruments and keys and bass and stuff like that. But yeah, I never really like took any music classes or anything like that growing up. It was just like I really just started writing lyrics like probably when I was like 16, 17 years old. And then yeah, it just kind of went from there. And then freestyling also was a really I never really like had a specific genre I wanted to get into. I just knew I wanted to make music, but then freestyle rapping was a huge part of my life. Like once I was like 17 or 18 years old, and then got really good at that and started writing lyrics even more. And yeah, just kind of rolled the dice on it. So
Yeah, that's awesome, man. When did you start to put these ideas into actual recordings? Like, when did you start to record yourself or even record others? Like, which came first?
yeah, pretty early on. I started recording myself first. Like I think I was like maybe like I don't know, I was like 18 or 19, just like right out of high school is when I found this studio in Draper and recorded like two songs there, and it was like super pricey. So I was like, why don't I just buy my own shit and start recording myself, which I ended up doing.
Yeah,
So I just kind of like bought my own equipment, computer, microphone, and it was all pretty like relatively simple to do. And then I just started recording myself. So it was like pretty shortly after, once I really started like writing lyrics and structuring songs and stuff, I got into recording. So, and I never really like record. I'd record my friends here and there and like some other artists, but mostly just myself. So
gotcha. What was the learning curve like for you to get into production? Like, was your quality not really that good in the beginning, or were you always kind of like a natural at it? How was that?
yeah, as far as like production, I'm still like very new to producing beats and stuff like that. I usually work like with in-house producers. Like I'll work with Coblin. Young Nothing is a huge like one producer I've worked with for the past couple of years. So I kind of just like it will help like co-produce and stuff like that. But as far as like I producing my own beats, I haven't really like produced like a full track yet that I've like actually made a song on. I don't really feel like I'm at the level where I could like clean up a beat really nice, like mix it well and just make it sound good enough to record vocals over. So, but I do enjoy the process of producing, and the learning curve is really different from writing lyrics. I feel like you got to have more patience, and I don't have a lot of patience. So producing is a lot, it's more tedious to me, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, I can definitely get into it once I just sit down, turn my machine on, and just start fucking around and making something, you know?
Yeah, man. So what drove you to want to record in the first place, like to put your stuff ideas into actual recordings? And then what drives you now to keep doing it?
That's a good question. What like drove me first was, I don't know, man. I just felt like I had something to share. You know what I mean? Like, I always knew I wanted to like make music to kind of help somebody out, or just like create something for somebody that could transcend the way they are viewing their experience in life. You know what I mean? And just, you know, if they're going through something, I just wanted to create something that could help somebody get through a tough time, or just make something to make someone vibe. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of like the artists that I'm inspired by. That's what they did for me, and I wanted to do the same for other people. So that's kind of just what drove me to record and like put stuff out in the first place. And then it's pretty much the same thing now. It's like the same thing that drives me now to this day, is just to make like, you know, timeless music, something people can enjoy, catch a vibe from, or, you know, if they're going through something, they could just throw on a song that they love, and, you know, it gets them through that. So yeah, it's just the musical experience for me. Just creating and the process of it was just always a huge driving factor. So
Yeah, that's great, man. What's your experience been with the hip hop scene in Salt Lake? Like, what's the hip hop scene like?
oh man, I feel like I've seen it go through so many different phases, which is cool. But even before I started, like there was so much that was going on in the scene that I just like never even knew, which is crazy. Because when I started making music, I actually had like zero idea that there was even a scene in Utah. I was really naive to think like, oh, I might be like one of the few artists out here, but which is so not true.
Yeah.
Because like as soon as I got into the scene, I was just like, you know, the doors opened up to this whole nother world I didn't even know existed in my own city. So, and that was like back in 2015, 2016. And I got to shout out Regular Ass Dude. That's his name, Regular Ass Dude, and his name's Chase. But he really like got me connected to the local scene at first, because I didn't really know, you know, anybody really within the local scene. I didn't know how to get put on shows or anything like that. And he kind of came along, and we collaborated, and he just really opened me up to the scene. And yeah, just seeing it progress throughout the years has been crazy. I feel like I've seen a lot of different phases of the hip hop scene, and still to this day, it's like still so under the radar, which is crazy. But like, yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of rambling. I forgot what the question was, but
No,
I'm just
that's great. That's a
just
great.
go with.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of the things we're trying to address with our app. Like, there's so many musicians people aren't aware of, and
Yeah.
it's just crazy. Like, as I personally dived into, or diving in, whatever the word is, into the Lake scene, there are so many artists I had no idea of. Like,
Yeah.
as if someone who's performed, you know, like I don't know, a few dozen shows or whatever, at least.
Hmm.
There's just a ridiculous amount of talent, and it's crazy what people don't know.
Yeah, it's true, and that's just hip hop. But there's so much. I've been diving in ever since I got into the hip hop scene. I've dove into the different genres, like indie rock. There's a huge scene from that here, rock and roll. Like there's just so much that like I didn't even know existed. Like, you know, back when I was in high school, until I did it myself. And it's just like, wow, like I feel like it's so under the radar, and I feel like more people should be involved in the local scene of not just hip hop, but like literally music in general. And there's, you know, we have things like the arts festival that'll put on local musicians and stuff like that, but I feel like it's just like not as big as something like, you know, as like Warp Tour was, or like the Hive Festival that's going to happen this year. Like the Hive Festival is happening in Salt Lake, yet there's zero fucking, you know, Salt Lake hip hop artists on it. You know what I'm saying? Like
Exactly.
it's all just like huge artists, which is cool, and that's great for them. You know, they can come out and perform for us and inspire us to do the same thing with our local musicians. But it's like if we're putting on big shows like that, like there should be at least like a stage or a section or whatever that'll promote like what we have here. So I don't know, but I feel like in time, all that's just going to happen. A snowball effects in itself because there's so, like you said, there's so many artists here that eventually it's just like, someone's going to come across them and people are going to know outside of Salt Lake and outside of Utah that there's something going on here. So
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think of because it's good they're growing the hip hop scene in Utah, like bringing hip hop in Utah in general to awareness. But it's
yeah,
another thing to grow the hip hop of Utah, like Utah's own personal talent that is definitely there.
right. Yeah. I mean, you never really like think that there would be anything like, I feel like if I didn't live in Utah, I definitely wouldn't have thought there'd be anything like crazy happening in Utah as far as the music scene goes. So, I mean, it's just like, well, when people find out, like they see the talent that's in it and, they know that there's something special there. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, absolutely. So when you first got into the hip hop scene and started building those connections, what were some of the first steps you took to build those connections, and like where did you find people to network with?
yeah, I don't know. For me, like networking is just always, I've always based it off of like a genuine connection that I have with somebody. I usually don't like go out of my way to like network with people I don't feel like um, I've kind of established a connection with, you know what I mean? Or something that just feels genuine to me. So that's kind of how I've always addressed like just meeting people and sitting down with them to have a conversation and just growing the scene. You know what I mean? So I've always felt like that's always been important to me. It's just like the relationship I have with these people that I'm building a beautiful thing with. Like I think it's very important to establish that there's some a connection other than just business. You know what I mean? Because I fucking hate the whole business side of things. I like doing this like one on one, just talking about the history of it all and just like music in general and stuff like that. Like I always felt like that was just the important way to go about networking with people and growing the scene that I'm a part of because like how else are you to grow something without like an established bond, or something, some sort of structure that's gonna keep a frame, you know what I mean? Like keep the structure intact. You gotta have some sort of connection there, some sort of
Yeah,
bond. But yeah,
exactly. And it's like, business is important to get the word out and to spread it and stuff. Like it's
yeah,
there for a reason. But I think
mhm.
so many times it kind of overshadows what it was really built around in the first place, which is these connections. It's what music gives us in the first place. Like at the core of
Yeah.
it, music is this connection from one person expressing themselves to the next that gets caught on.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've met some of like people that I'm still really close friends with today. I've met through music, even before I made music. Like just going to because I would go to a lot of metal shows when I was like in middle school and high school. So I just built so many friendships by just going to shows and like meeting people there. And then still to this day, I have some sort of connection to them, still talk to them just from like us having the same interests in the same bands. You know what I mean? So it's yeah, it's a beautiful thing for sure.
Yeah, brings people together like nothing else. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
absolutely. Yeah.
So have you ever played any live shows? What's your experience been with that?
Yeah, I've played a ton of live shows. My first ever show was out, actually not even in Salt Lake. It was in Denver. I came across this like pay to play contest type thing that was out in Denver. And I didn't really know any better at the time. I just knew like, oh, I want to perform. And I think I only had like 2 or 3 songs out at the time. I didn't even have a full set, but that was okay because I literally paid like 200 something bucks to perform one song in
Wow.
front of a pretty decent crowd. Though it was a pretty big crowd, but it was out in Denver. The experience itself was amazing. I just went out there with a bunch of friends and yeah, nonetheless, like that was my first show. It was out in Denver, and then fast forward a couple months later into 2016, early 2016 is when I met regular ass dude, and he just asked me to perform with him at a bunch of shows, and sure enough, the kind of domino affected. I met people, and then yeah, just started performing shows in the city and just done a lot. I've performed everywhere from like the Beehive Social Club was one place that I started a lot. Started doing shows at a lot, and then I did the Complex a few times I think, and Metro, and just like all of the places that I'd go to see my favorite bands. I started performing out, which was super sick. So Kilby Court, but yeah, I've done a lot of shows, and I think the performance of the music might be one of my favorite parts of creating music. Like I love creating music. Sometimes I can really just like really want to just take a step back from it, like let my mind, adjust before I have to create something. Because when I'm creating, I feel like I have to, it's 100% like emotion and effort into creating a song, which can be super draining. But as soon as I hit the stage and perform, it's like, holy shit, like it's like there's no other feeling than performing. And I love that so much. So yeah, I've done a lot of shows, and I just, happy to continue to keep doing what I'm doing, and hopefully perform more bigger venues here in Salt Lake, and get more shows outside of the state too.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Have you had a favorite show so far? Like, is there one show you can single out by chance?
Oh man, that's kind of tough. There was one show I opened up for Fora at Complex, and that was the first time I performed Complex. It was the small side, but it was a packed house. It was sold out, so it was in front of like an entire audience that had no idea who I was, but yet they were rocking with the set, which was super sick. So that was memorable, as in like probably the biggest crowd I performed in front of. I really like the Salt Lake Arts Festival. I did that in 2019. And then a ton of shows at this old venue called Gold Blood, that would get super rowdy, and the Beehive, just lots of experiences. So it's kind of hard to narrow down to one favorite show, because as soon as I mention one, then I start to think of another, and I'm like, wait, no, what about that? Oh, but what about this one? So it's hard to pick one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good lane to go down, though. That memory lane. That's
Yeah,
good
dude.
memory.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
So, have you ever made a song with live in mind specifically, like a song that you think, oh, this is going to be a hit, like beyond just the recording aspect?
Yeah, as far as like making a song for a live performance.
Yeah, with like live
Yeah,
performance in mind first.
in first, actually, no, I've never actually gone into a studio thinking like, hey, I'm gonna make this song for a live performance. For me, like making a song is all really like in the moment. Unless I'm creating like an album or something, then I do have some conceptual ideas that I form together before going in the studio. But never have I thought about like thinking what it would sound like live. If I were to go that route, obviously it works for any genre, but I could definitely see myself doing that for like, if I were to come together with a band and create something. Like if I say I wanted to do a solo song, and perform it live with a band or something like that, that would definitely be a good way to approach, recording something, is like thinking of how to do it for a live performance. But no, not really. I've never actually really gone that route as far as recording music.
Yeah, good to know. Just had an interesting thought about it. But yeah, tell me what's something you're excited for that's coming up.
Um, well, I've done a lot of, for the past year, me and Coblin have done a collab project that we're calling Block Party. It's just like a duo hip hop thing that we started creating like last March 2020. And it started with the song. And then from there, I had the idea of like, what if we just came together as a duo, had a name for it, and then just make a bunch of songs. And that's essentially what we did all last summer, was just make a shit ton of songs, probably like an album's worth of music. And we're still continuing to make music now, but now we're about to start the rollout on that and start dropping Block Party stuff. We had a show last weekend at Soundwell downtown for a DJ Juggy Salt Lake City showcase, and that was super sweet. And yeah, me and Coblin have just known each other through like the music scene, and just we became really good friends. And then I don't know, it just seemed like right for us to come together and make this like whole separate entity that's outside of our like solo projects and stuff. So I'm super excited to share that, because I've just been putting a lot of effort into it for like the past year. And so is Coblin. He's been making the beats. And we've just like, I think, put some of our best like lyrics to date, both individually and together on this project that we have coming. So super stoked about that. As far as like other musical ventures, we're just looking into maybe starting a different project, like a different genre, because I love hip hop, but I never wanted to just be stuck in a box, you know what I mean, or make one type of music. I've always wanted to make, some indie rock, which I have done in the past, some metal or some hard rock, some punk. So we'll just see where it goes. You know what I mean? I just kind of go with the flow of life, and that's kind of how I got here. So I mean, we'll just see where it takes me now. So
That's awesome, man. Do you have any long-term goals for your music?
long-term goals, yeah, I think the one that comes to mind is I just want to make an album that's just a timeless album, like something someone could listen to 12, 15 years later, and it still has a feeling that it pulls from underneath them that they can't describe. You know what I mean? For me, an album like that would be like Man on the Moon by Kid Cudi, or Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, like um countless albums, Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick. I just want to create something that takes a long time to create, formulate, and once I put it out, it's just something that I even myself can look back on and just like still love, no matter, even if it's like 15 years later down the line or something. So long
That's
term,
awesome.
I think of that, and just being able to like, have a good and stable income from music, because being a starving artist is very difficult as far as the income goes. You don't really see a lot of money, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
being an independent artist nonetheless. So I mean, yeah, just being able to um gain an income from it, so I could just do it, all the time, and not really have to work a desk job or whatever, you know what I mean, to fund it.
Absolutely. Yeah, dude, those are good goals. I like hearing
Yeah.
that. And it's cool to have that vision in mind for like one of those albums that you want, like what kind of album you want. And that'll be good for you, man. I think it's gonna come. I think it's gonna be great.
Yeah, thanks, man. I feel it too. I've always had an idea for one, but I've never been one to rush anything. You know what I mean? If I have an idea, I like to plant it in my mind. I let it soak in. It's almost like, gardening or planting a tree or something. You know what I mean? You have the idea, you have the seed, you let it, plant it, water it, and then allow that thing to, it'll grow in time. As long
Yeah,
as you keep watering the
exactly. You got to get
the
that
idea.
foundation
So.
first.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've just been taking a lot of the time these past couple months, just really like, um, figuring out my own values, even outside of music, and just figuring out, because I was able to, being an artist, you can get so lost in music that you kind of lose yourself a little bit. So I really had to like pull myself back and figure out, okay, what am I doing? And just trying to think long term, and stuff like that. So really just being able to, come back to myself, and then that way, once I'm ready to go back into it, the music is just, stronger and better than ever. So,
Yeah, I think it's important to take care of that human side of ourselves too,
oh
along with the
yeah,
artist side, to make sure the artist side is something to draw from. You have to find inspiration from somewhere.
absolutely. Yeah. You can't just keep running on E all the time. You have to be able to pull yourself back for a little bit, experience life outside of music. So that way, when you go to create music, you have experiences you can pull from, because, you're just making music all the time without experiencing life. What the hell are you, what kind of music are you making then? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
well, and I've always just been one to make music that's based off of my own experiences, and the life that I live. So I feel like it's really important for me to, go and have these experiences in life. So when I come back to create, I have a lot of inspiration to pull from. You can get inspiration from music itself, but I think the best inspiration is like, in the lives that we live each day individually. And there's a lot of inspiration at all times. It's just about being able to open your mind to those things, and seeing them for what they are.